Think about it. Why is holding your breath so dangerous? It's not just about running out of oxygen. The real threat is that you are actively turning your own blood into acid. And understanding why reveals this hidden, moment-to-moment conflict that your body absolutely must win, or you just cease to exist. The entire objective of this internal war is to maintain something called pH. It's basically just a measure of acidity in your blood. And your body is in this constant, almost desperate struggle to keep it perfectly balanced. Because if it fails, well, everything else fails with it. And this right here, this is the razor's edge that life exists on. It's not 7.3, it's not 7.5. The entire complex operating system that is you runs inside this tiny, tiny window between 7.35 and 7.45. The stakes really couldn't be any higher. So the best way to picture this is to think of a seesaw. Yeah, a simple seesaw. On one side, you've got acid, and on the other, you've got a base, which neutralizes the acid. Your body's job is to constantly make these tiny, precise adjustments to keep that board from tipping too far one way or the other. So, who's making all these little adjustments? Well, there are two main players, your lungs and your kidneys. But here's the thing, they operate on completely different timelines. The lungs, they're the sprinters. They make incredibly fast changes within minutes. The kidneys, they're the marathon runners, working slowly and methodically over hours or even days. Okay, so let's start with the lungs. Their job is to manage carbon dioxide, or CO2. And you have to start thinking of CO2 as an acid. Every time you exhale, you're not just getting rid of some waste gas. You are actively removing acid from your blood. It's called a volatile acid because it mixes with the water in your blood to become acidic, but it can just as easily turn back into a gas so you can breathe it out. And the way this works is just brutally simple. If you breathe faster and deeper, you blow off more of that acidic CO2, which makes your blood less acidic. And if you breathe slower and more shallowly, you hold on to that CO2, making your blood more acidic. This is your body's fast twitch control knob. Now, the kidneys, on the other hand, they manage something called bicarbonate, or HCO3-. If CO2 is the acid, then think of bicarbonate as its opposite, a powerful, steady base that counterbalances the acid. The kidneys can either make more of it or get rid of it to fine-tune that balance. This is the slow, deliberate, but incredibly powerful control system. And this is where it gets really cool. When you watch these two systems, a hidden pattern starts to emerge, a fundamental rule. Because CO2 acts as an acid, any change in CO2 creates an opposite change in pH. So as the acid, CO2, goes up, the pH goes down, meaning it's getting more acidic. They move in opposite directions. But with the kidneys' bicarbonate, it's the other way around. Bicarbonate is a base. Its whole job is to absorb acid. So if the base, bicarbonate, goes down, well, there's less of it to do its job, so the pH also goes down, becoming more acidic. They fall together. They move in an equal direction. See, it's not a random trick. It's just the signature of the chemistry. Respiratory is opposite, metabolic is equal. And this relationship is so reliable, so fundamental, that it actually has a name. Rome. Okay, so we get the system, but the real test is what happens when it breaks, right? What happens if the lungs, our sprinters, start to fail and acid starts building up way faster than they can remove it? How does the body possibly fight back? Well, the other system steps in. The marathon runner comes to help the sprinter. This process is called compensation. If the lungs are failing and acid is building up, the kidneys will slowly and deliberately start to produce and hold on to more base, more bicarbonate, to try and neutralize that threat. And you can literally see this battle playing out in the numbers. Take a look at this. The pH is 7.23. That's dangerously acidic. And what's the cause? A high PaCO2 of 50. So it's a respiratory problem. But then, look at the bicarb. It's high at 30. That's the kidneys fighting back, pumping out base to try and compensate. This is a snapshot of a war in progress. It's called partial compensation. The body is fighting, but right now, it's losing. So that brings us to an even deeper mystery. What about a set of numbers where the pH actually looks normal, but the CO2 and the bicarbonate are both totally out of whack? Does that mean the battle's over? Is everything okay? Not at all. It actually means the battle has reached a very fragile stalemate, and you have to look closer for the truth. Here's the key. While the normal range for pH is 7.35 to 7.45, the absolute perfect center is 7.40. So, a pH that's normal but still under 7.40 is normal but leaning acidic, and one over 7.40 is normal but leaning basic. That little lean, that tells you which side started the fight. Look at this. This slide tells a whole story. The pH is 7.44, which is technically normal, but the CO2 is high and acidic, and the bicarbonate is high and basic. The seesaw is level, sure, but both players are pushing with everything they have just to keep it there. This is what we call full compensation. So how do we know what the original problem was? We look at the pH of 7.44. Yes, it's normal, but it's leaning towards the basic side. Now, which of the other two abnormal values is also on the basic side? The bicarb. They match. And that tells us everything. The original problem was metabolic, too much base, and the lungs have compensated by retaining acid to pull the pH back into the normal range. We just solved the mystery. So you start to see these numbers aren't just data points on a lab report. They're like a message from the front lines. A snapshot of a dynamic, incredibly high-stakes war for equilibrium that is being fought inside the body, second by second. So the next time you take a deep breath and feel that release as you exhale, just remember what's really happening. You're not just breathing. You are actively taking part in an ancient, silent balancing act that defines the very boundary between life and chaos. And in that one moment, you're winning the war.